One of my favorite 21 Pilots songs to hear live is Heavy Dirty Soul. It's one of my favorite songs off of Blurryface. The studio version is amazing, but it's on a different level when you hear it live because you can hear how heavy it is. You can feel how heavy it is, and Tyler gives it his all by doing the scream at the very end. It's one of my favorite Tyler screams. And for these 6 shows that 21 Pilots have been doing, they have done 3 out of the 6 so far. People have been talking about Heavy Dirty Soul, and specifically one thing that Tyler does, and that is his death drop. And people are talking about this more because of what happens after Heavy Dirty Soul and what happens after the death drop, and that is Todd Government of the Psy Band runs down and revives Tyler. He acts like one of those people where you grab those 2 pads, you rub them together, get them all static charge, you put them on the chest, yell clear, and then you shock the person, send a bolt of electricity through their body, and revives them. At least that's how I think it works. I'm not a doctor, I majored in music, but a lot of people are talking about the possible lore implications of this. If it's not the blurry paint shirt, it's this. So let's go ahead and talk about it, shall we? Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on when you're watching this. How's it going, guys? First off, hope you're having a good day today. Hope your day's going well and hope it continues to go well. Let's get right into it. There'll be chapters down in the description box below to hop to sections because we're going to start off with the history of the Tyler death drop first. And it's actually a pretty brief history because this all started during the Blurryface era, of course, because this is when Heavy Dirty Soul was a thing. I couldn't find any evidence of Tyler doing it during the Vessel era at all, but definitely during Heavy Dirty Soul. The interesting bit is that during Blurryface, he did it in the middle of the song. He did it before the Death Inspires Me Like a Dog Inspires a Rabbit section. They would stand up and finish the song, and at the very end of the song, oftentimes Tyler would do the muscle pose, which I found pretty interesting because I know a lot of people have been hyperfixating on that as well since the live stream experience. During the Trench era, Tyler didn't do the death drop at all during Heavy Dirty Soul when it was performed. He just did everything completely standing, but he still did the muscle thing at the very end, which is pretty cool. And of course, as we know in the Scale and Icy era, it happens at the end of the song where Tyler sings the final can you save my, can you save my heavy dirty souls, and stays down the ground while Josh and sometimes Skylar Cord, the bass player of the Psy Band, will do the Muscle Man pose, which is pretty cool. And again, as I mentioned earlier, that this time Todd is running up to Tyler and doing this whole revival thing, which has a lot of people talking. It is worth noting that this whole revival sequence did not happen at the last 21 Pilots show 2 days ago when they're in Paraguay, because I think there was just, Tyler was frustrated with more tech issues. I think he was just a little bit annoyed. So the death drop didn't happen, neither did this whole revival sequence. The band still played the little music that happens during the revival sequence because Tyler goes out into the crowd and does Ride, but all eyes are going to be on Heavy Dirty Soul tonight for show 4 in Colombia. Now, an interesting parallel that I see a lot of people make with Tyler laying down after the Heavy Dirty Soul sequence before he gets revived is that it looks an awful lot like one of the files uploaded by Clancy. Specifically, if you open your Clancy Journal hymnals and turn to 01807 Moon 08, you will find this image right here. Of course, this is a still from Tyler in the Jumpsuit music video where he is laying in the ravine, and yeah, you can definitely see the resemblance in both of these. And this has been making the rounds, but I don't think a lot of people have noticed that when Tyler gets revived, he just sits straight up like he's the Undertaker. Just sits right up. And in the Jumpsuit music video, what does Tyler do? He just sits straight up as well. It's almost as if they're playing into the fact that these 2 music videos happen right after each other. One of the things that I thought of when I first saw this was that somehow it was tied into what we see in the Outside music video with Ned's horns. The people being able to seize empty vessels. Like how we saw Tyler seize the empty vessel of Keons, or how Keons, when alive, seized the empty vessel of Trash the Dragon. And how in the live stream experience we saw Sakarva and Lisden seize the empty vessels of Dan and Sally. That's right, they were not alive, they were in fact dead, and we saw them decay before our very eyes, showing that yeah, these guys aren't alive. Basically, if we see glowing yellow eyes, that means that someone, an empty vessel, is being seized or someone is seizing an empty vessel, only exception being Tyler's red eyes because he's the only alive vessel that can be seized according to Mark from Real Bear Media, who's the person who knows the most about the lore outside of Tyler and Josh. And the reason why I bring all this up is because we don't see that happen when Todd's doing this. This is a revival. And that's the horns don't revive people. We are not putting a spirit back in the body that it belongs in. We are just putting our mindset and we're taking over the empty body. We're taking over that empty vessel. We are not reviving anything. So in my mind, they don't line up together. And that if this was something like the horns, it's something we haven't been introduced to yet. And when you look up psychokinesis, which is what the last Clancy file name was called when you saw all the numbers and 2 letters in the alphabet, and Clancy calls it a psychokinetic weapon inside the journal. When you look up psychokinesis, it's nothing about revival once again. It is basically telekinesis abilities. But more specifically, as Google tells me here, psychokinesis or telekinesis is a hypothetical psychic ability allowing a person to influence a physical system without physical interaction, aka what we see Ned Horns do. And here is where I want to throw in this part that it could be nothing. It couldn't just be the band having fun, because not everything Tyler and Josh do is lore related, especially because we're at a festival where it falls in a weird middle ground because it's not their own thing. It's not Bandito Tour. It's not AC Tour. It's not Emotional Roadshow. It's not Take Over Tour. It makes sense to do lore stuff at those shows, but for festival shows, when you have a whole bunch of acts and people who aren't necessarily there to see you, like 21 Pilots doing European festivals last summer, sometimes they weren't the headliner. Sometimes they would be middle of everything, or like third headliner or such, to where it wouldn't make sense to do a whole bunch of lore things. So there's a possibility that it's not, but there's the equal possibility that it is, so we take everything with a pinch of salt. The good thing is, no one's right and no one's wrong until proven otherwise by Tyler and Josh, until we get something official from both of them. So we will continue to speculate, but always keep that in the back of your mind that it could possibly be nothing. And now back to theorizing over it, because it's fun to fantasize. So if it doesn't tie into Ned's horn ability of psychokinesis, which if it does and you have an argument for it, I am open to hear it. I would love to admit that I am wrong, and I would love to hear you guys out, because I love having these discussions and I'm willing and open to everything. And so there's that. But if it doesn't tie into Ned's horns, how can we tie it into? Well, I think that the safest answer is something we already talked about, and that is that it's just a callback to Jumpsuit, and a callback that the Heavy Dirty Soul music video happens before the Jumpsuit music video because of their eerily similarities, like these 2 pictures, or them setting up like the Undertaker there. Now, the confusing thing about this bit is how the music videos go from Heavy Dirty Soul to Jumpsuit, but set list order, it's Jumpsuit, Heavy Dirty Soul. That one I have not quite figured out. Maybe they're just trying to confuse us, but they do sound pretty good together back to back like that. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that all this represents is a revival in spirit, specifically Clancy's spirit, because oh boy, Clancy's been through a lot. If you just read the journals or listen to the audiobook of the Clancy's journals I have on the channel, and you can definitely see all that or hear all that, because in the very early journals, Clancy has this optimism that they will leave Dema and they will see what's on the outside of the walls. And of course we know that happens. But we also know that Clancy kind of gets scared outside of the walls during the events of the Jumpsuit music video, seeing the banditos, seeing the rider on the horse, and then of course getting thrown back into Dema. Keons finding Clancy, and Clancy is scared in this journal and kind of admitting defeat in this one before we get to the Scale 90 era, where locked in prison, going onto the sub that inevitably crashes, and then getting this weapon Clancy doesn't fully understand. Maybe this revival just represents a revival in the hope that Clancy once had, a renewal of that overall optimism, spirit, this spunk. A half-baked idea I just thought of is that what if this is telling us that Keons is going to be revived in the next era? Because after all, Heavy Dirty Soul is Keons' song. That's the song that belongs to him because his name can be found within the song on the line Chokes on Smoke. Every bishop has their song on Blurryface, and that just happens to be Keons. And where does Tyler do the death drop? Heavy Dirty Soul. So maybe this is telling us Keons is going to be revived in the next era in some way, shape, or form. Whether that, and there's two different scenarios in there. One, you have the idea that Keons could be revived by the bishops because, I mean, they have 9 districts. One bishop can't run 2. Hey, buddy, we kind of need you to do your job again. And maybe just brainwash overall, or smearing Keons to act like, you know what, that never happened. And scenario number 2, Keons gets revived to help the Banditos and is a turncoat to the other bishops, which I think we can go into a little deep dive on that theory hole if you guys want to see that one. But the 2 options of Keons revival for the bishops, for the Banditos. And I'm not just talking about the Ned Horn magic, I'm talking about full spirits back in the physical body revival that we haven't seen in the storyline yet. Honestly, that's all I can think of every way that this revival possibly ties into the Dema storyline. It's either telling us something that already happened, or it's signifying that yes, this is a thing, or just putting more emphasis on it, and or it's alluding to something in the future. Maybe that's how the next music video is going to start. We're all gonna be confused. Tyler, how did you get into that? You're just laying on the ground once again. Who knows, but I would love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below, whether that be if you agree with any of these points or whether you disagree. Most likely you're probably going to disagree over the whole psychokinesis Ned Horn section, which again, open for discussion and love to hear your arguments, insides on it. But anyway guys, I will see you all tomorrow with something. It's 2 a.m. all fun, but I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye and good night. More importantly, have a good day. I'll see you later.